Welcome to the Government Connection with Mary Scott Nabers. Mary, a former statewide office holder and now CEO of Strategic Partnerships, brings you conversations with industry experts. This is your connection to breaking news, funding opportunities, legislative actions, and more. Brought to you by Government Market News, a division of Strategic Partnerships, Inc.
Thank you for joining us today. Have we ever got a program for you on the connection? Let me introduce our VIP guest, Chris James, who is the President and CEO of the National Center for American Indian Enterprise Development, which is the largest business development and technical assistance training organization in the country for American Indian and Alaskan Native-owned businesses. And Chris, the world at large, public at large, does not understand enough about who you are and what you do and the impact you have. So let me just stop long enough for you to tell them a little bit about yourself and then about your organization, because we're going to talk about how we all could work better with you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mary, for having me. It's so great. I love being called a VIP. Sometimes
Well, you are that.
I don't always get to be called a VIP. So thank you for that compliment. My name is Chris James. I'm originally from Cherokee, North Carolina. That's home of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, where I grew up in the mountains of North Carolina, close to Tennessee, right where North Carolina goes into Tennessee, right by the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And that's my home and where I grew up. Over the past almost decade, I've been as president and CEO of the National Center for American Indian Enterprise Development. That's located in Mesa, Arizona, right outside of Phoenix. And we are, like you said, one of the largest Native-focused trade associations in the country. We have about 4,000 clients we work with all through the United States. We have 9 offices throughout the United States. And we just really believe in supporting our Native communities, our rural communities, and our small businesses.
So, Chris, I know that we have a lot of private sector companies that sell to government, the United States government. They would love to know how do they connect with the Indian nations? Start from the very beginning. What do they need? What do you see coming up in the future? And then how can you help make some of those connections and help us to understand the culture, the processes, and the procedures?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, our tribal nations are so diverse. We have 574 federally recognized tribes, 300 plus different languages throughout the United States, and almost every state in the United States has some type of Native presence. So a huge amount. I think we cover about 15% of our land in the United States. So our tribes are already a powerhouse. We have a lot of tribes that are working in the natural resources sector. So we have oil and gas tribes. We have mineral tribes. We have many tribes that have their own mining companies. We have tribes that are involved in all sorts of different types of sectors, including construction and agribusiness, and just the diversity of the tribes. We have very large tribal enterprises that are doing huge contracts with the federal government. They're also doing contracts with a lot of Fortune 500 companies, and they are really a driving force for a lot of rural communities. Oftentimes, our tribal community is the number one employer for the area, and the benefits that the tribes do trickle down to the surrounding communities as well.
Okay, but tell me how a private sector, non-Indian nation company would come in and say, we want to work with you. You have a lot of procurement, you have a lot of outreach. What do they need to know, I guess is what I'm trying to ask.
Well, I think one way, a great way, there's 2 ways a company could work with a tribe. One is a direct partnership. That could be maybe a company is they're looking for a partner to go after a contract from the federal government. So having a tribe or a tribal enterprise as their partner, and they do like maybe a mentorship program or a teaming type effort on a contract is one really easy way. And there's probably 400 different companies that a tribe, there's 400 plus tribal companies that are out there that could work in that capacity. Another way as well, beyond doing teaming or partnering for various contracts, is one, having a tribally owned business as part of their supply chain. So, expanding their supply chain, having that business maybe do some manufacturing, or maybe there's a construction company or even IT. There's so many options to have a tribal company as part of the overall supply chains. And then lastly, there's opportunities, there's advantages for companies to even have a warehouse on tribal property or a facility. So there's advantage because tribes are sovereign nations, so there's that opportunity as well.
And I know your organization has some networking opportunities.
We do.
So talk to us about that.
We, the National Center for American Indian Enterprise Development, we put on the largest Native-focused conference, economic development conference in the world. It's called RES, the Reservation Economic Summit. RES attracts about 5,000 attendees a year. It's in Las Vegas every year. Part of RES is an intense amount of matchmaking where we are matching our tribally owned companies, our individually Native owned companies with corporations, with federal governments, creating those teaming alliances and partnerships so that folks can do business together. And we're also even stretching out to our international areas. We have a great presence in Canada, and now we're starting in Australia and New Zealand, making those connections so businesses can do native to native businesses, but also more native businesses in the various supply chains internationally as well.
And so I know you have large casinos, you have, a need for technology, you have a need for security, you have lots of needs. So do those companies, I'm sure they have procurement competitive events.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question too, Mary. I mean, the way our large companies that tribes own, so you mentioned gaming, we have about 20% of our tribes do gaming of some type, and those are often large facilities. And you just described a few, but you're also talking construction, you're talking ground maintenance, sometimes you're talking security. So there are opportunities. Usually tribes, when they're looking at procuring for their gaming facilities, they do look for their own tribal members first as almost like a tier one, but then it goes down into tier two, tier three. So various businesses could have the opportunity. And that's where oftentimes that teaming arrangement is very beneficial. So if there's a company that partners with a native company, and then they go after a contract for IT or a contract for some sort of facilities management. I mean, that would be a really beneficial thing for them, and they could possibly get a contract with a gaming operation.
Okay, so let's just do a scenario here.
Absolutely.
Let's assume that there's a large casino that needs new technology, and a non-native company has the newest AI. If they wanted to compete for their needs, the best thing they could do is to go and find another IT company that is a native nation, Indian Nation tribe member, form a partnership, and go after that project together.
Yeah, that's one opportunity. I think too, though, if there's a technology that is one and only, like just as you mentioned, like an AI technology that no one else has, of course, tribes would love to look at that as
Anyway, they'd look at it anyway.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I think there's a bunch of pathways, and the idea of when gaming is enterprise for the community. So when all of the revenues from that gaming goes back into the community to help with health and to help with infrastructure of the community, to help with education. So the having a diverse supply chain for that gaming is an advantage, but I think it's also an opportunity for companies to support tribes in a lot of different ways beyond just doing work for them.
And I think about schools. I think about water treatment plants. I think about all of that. And technology is morphing and changing so quickly now that the expertise is phenomenal.
Yeah, infrastructure development.
Yes.
There's so many things. I mean, our tribes are sovereign nations, so they're able to create their own rules on how they do procurement. They're able to have their own infrastructure in ways that are separate from working with a state or working with a county. So there are benefits in the overall infrastructure of a tribal community and working with companies on how to build that infrastructure.
You know this, and maybe not all of our listeners know this, but we are a business development firm. We help companies that want to sell their offerings to government in the U.S. government marketplace. And so we pretty much cover the waterfront. We have every industry type that we work with. So let me ask you just a couple of questions. I know that the Indian nations go after grants, and you're very successful in getting those grants, but do you ever use services such as grant writing services, or are those types of things already there for the nations?
Some of our tribal communities have their own grants offices internal. Some do work with outside firms to help them. And then nonprofits like myself, sometimes we have a combination. So I have an internal team as well as external consultants to help, find the grants. It really depends on which grants you're looking for and what type of help you need.
And right now you have to look at which ones are still allocating funding and which ones are frozen, because we're in a little bit different situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So your organization does help them find opportunities, and so it would probably be good for private sector firms to be affiliated in some way with you. Is the best way to do that to find one of your events and come to that?
Yeah, absolutely. We do matchmaking events all over the country. We do events called Native Edge Institutes, which is we're sort of on a little bit of our break. We call it our season's over, because we probably did about 20 institutes in a row, taking just a little break during the summer, and then we'll start back up in the fall. But these Native Edge Institutes there's a procurement training element to it, so we're actually have some classroom type training with some of the best procurement folks in the country come and speak. Then we go in the afternoon. We go into what we call roundtables, where there's an opportunity for companies to connect with each other and also connect with the speakers or presenters as well. And those institutes, we just had one in Connecticut 2 weeks ago, and we'll start back up in the fall. So that is one way. Another way, is just to reach out to the National Center directly. My contact for the National Centers can be provided, and folks can just reach out, find some time to either meet with me or the team, and we can go through and help with opportunities. We have teams of folks that are working with tribal companies for them to find opportunities. So having some of your companies and your members, Mary, reach out, and maybe we can make some natural connections. We've done some virtual matchmaking before, but maybe there's just a natural connection right away.
Yeah. And I have to ask about public-private partnerships. You and I talked earlier about some of the federal funding that is not going to be available, not going to be allocated, it looks like, at least in the near future. So let's say that one of your regions has a need for a water treatment plant. And with the public-private partnerships, a private sector coalition would come in, a construction company, and a funding company. Does your organization approve those? Do you support those?
Yeah, well, we can help make those connections. So if there's, that's a great example. If there's a facility, water treatment plant that's needing to be built in a tribal community, we can one, help maybe find the opportunity out there. A lot of times we have networks and we have people on the ground that know projects that are coming down the pipeline and need help. A lot of our tribes are saying, "Hey, I was just speaking to a tribe in northern Arizona. They're doing some electricity grids. They're trying to they have some federal funding, but they need another 20 million type match. Right. So looking for those type of connections, they're out there. People are looking for those types of partnerships. Even in the tourism and gaming, one really great partnership from my community in North Carolina, the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, they have a Harrah's casino. Harrah's manages their casino, just like a Caesar's Palace or Harrah's in Las Vegas. But that partnership is the tribe still owns the gaming facilities. They still own the casino.
It's very much like a public-private partnership, yes.
Exactly. And there's all sorts of types of partnerships like there. In the oil and gas industry, there's those private partnerships. In the mining industry, there's that type of partnerships. And in the agriculture industry, there's one. I've been working very closely with a North Dakota tribe who have done this amazing indoor growing facility. There's probably not another one like it in the United States. And it's just amazing. They had some partners. They even might have had some international partners, and they built this beautiful facility. And, just another great example.
So, I know you have schools, you have healthcare, you have big hospitals and so forth. So there's all kinds of opportunities there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there anything that a private sector company needs to know about the culture? We bring a lot of companies from other countries into the United States marketplace, and that's one of the first things that I talk to them about. It's like, you've got to understand the culture. It's different. The commercial sector is one thing. The government sector is totally a different culture. Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about the culture they would need to understand.
I would have. Do their research. There's lots of, for each community, there's a lot of research about the history. Never go into any community, regardless if it's a native community in another country, or even rural community sometimes, without knowing what type of community you're going into. And that's my advice. And we have seen historic mishaps. Standing Rock is with a pipeline is a great example of things where things were done in adjacent to a tribe and no one talked to the tribe. No one had those conversations. No one tried to build that relationship. And then of course, as we all saw in the news, what can happen when things don't go right. So I think, doing a company doing their due diligence, finding a organization like myself that can help you navigate that. I even work with foreign governments with some of the navigation. So having the ability to help make connections and folks, having that ability, is the second thing. And then lastly, go into any type of relationship a little, especially those first early a little open-minded, knowing that your first meeting you may not walk out of there with the deal. It needs to, it's a relationship building. Yes, exactly.
We tell our clients, we brief them thoroughly before we take them into a meeting, any meeting, and we tell them things like, here's the stakeholder that's going to be there. Here's the influencer. Here's a real decision maker. Here's a financial situation you need to know about. And here's the political environment you're walking into. Now, so that leads me to my next question, and I know we're running out of time here, but let me ask you about this. We also have to tell our clients, if you're going into this state, you need to make sure that this verbiage you do not use, this verbiage you can use. And maybe the next state, it's okay, you can talk all you want here about this kind of verbiage and so forth, but they have to understand the political lay of the land. And so I'm wondering, do you find that in the Indian nations, is there a political vibe there that we need to know about?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are some areas of, in our country where you may have a tribe, you may have a tribal government, you may have a county government, maybe have a municipality, you may have a national park, and you may have a city government, all within almost the same plot of land. So again, understanding, navigating that, or having a trusted person to help you navigate that. Our tribes have very distinct boundaries, especially the ones that have land. They have very distinct boundaries, and they have, it's sovereign nations, and owning their own communities, owning their own land is very important. So understanding what sovereignty is, really understanding, but also a company can also understand there's advantages for the tribe in using that sovereignty. So again, it goes back to, you're doing business often in Western North Carolina, where I'm from, is different than doing business here in Arizona, and that's just approaching every opportunity with you're prepared to learn and prepared to navigate, I think is way to be, and then be aware. Yeah.
Okay, and that is great advice, and that is exactly the same advice we would give in the U.S. government marketplace. You have to do the research. You have to have the background. But we have the advantage of all kinds of transparency to get anything we want. Is that true in the Indian nations?
That's a good question. I think most of our community are very transparent. If they want to do business with a company, they're open to that. Now, if a tribe or community does not want to do business, I would also recommend don't try to force someone. There are areas where maybe the deal just doesn't work for that particular community, or a partnership with a various company or organization that just doesn't work for that particular community. And I think oftentimes there's folks out there that want to push relationships together that may not always really work. And for whatever reason, sometimes there's a financial gain, sometimes it's a consultant, who's they're not getting the clue. Whatever the case is, I think a company going into a situation, if there's a real deal that's available, and if there's a potential partner with a tribe, that tribe's going to be welcoming to that individual. If they're not welcoming, or if it doesn't just seem like it's not a good fit, then oftentimes that's the truth. It's just not a good fit.
Right. And I know I'm asking tough questions, but I want to ask one more.
Yeah.
So, normally, cities in the government marketplace have different governing structures. States have different governing structures. So if ever we don't know who has budget control in a city, it's real easy for us to go find out. What kind of governing structure do you have? How do we find that in the Indian Nation? How do we know who to go in to ask for a meeting? It like in a city, if it's a strong city manager governing structure, we got to go there. We don't go to the mayor. We've got to go there. So I'm wondering, is there enough transparency for us to be able to advise our clients on how to find that information, or can we find that information for them?
Yeah, absolutely. And our tribal.
I'll be calling you.
Yeah, you can be calling me. Our tribal governments are set up very similar to city government. I mean, we have, some of them have 3 branches of government. Some of them have a head of the tribe or a chief, but some of them only have a chairman of a tribe. Some of them have a council. Some of them have multiple councils. So there are different structures out there. But it's easy, for most cases, most of the tribes, they have a website, and they sort of can give you that lay of the land of what that community looks like. That is
so good. This has been so helpful, not only for our listeners and our viewers, but just for my team. They were all so excited to be able to hear from you. So I really appreciate this. And if you will get us more information about your events and your upcoming conference, we will attach it to this and make it available to all our viewers.
Well, thank you, Mary. Reservation Economic Summit, it's March 20th, 2026 at Caesars Palace in Las Vegas. So definitely would love to have folks come out and support our communities.
I'm sure that you will have some visitors from this podcast. Thank you so much, and we'll stay in touch with you.
Thank you, Mary.
And thanks for all of our listeners. We appreciate you. Stay tuned daily to Government Market News, because we'll be announcing upcoming podcasts in the future. Thanks a lot, Chris.
This has been The Government Connection with Mary Scott Nabers. If you enjoyed the conversation, be sure to subscribe to get notifications on our upcoming programs. We hope you'll leave a review wherever you get your podcasts, and send us any programming suggestions directly. Thanks for listening.